But Brian Crecente has been writing about gaming since long before it was considered cool. He has contributed to Geek.com, Gamezilla, Extended Play, Playboy Magazine, and Jester.com. But he's probably best known for his current gig where he is a writer and editor-in-chief for Kotaku.com. Brian, are you there, sir?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you so
clear.
much for coming on our show. And first and foremost, before we get into any of the questions, where did Kotaku come from? What does it mean? What does it stand for? Just the name itself. We're trying to figure that out.
It's a made-up word. Actually, a little bit of something that some people don't know. I was not the original editor on Kotaku. There was another person running the site for about 2 months before they hired me. So that person and Gawker Media were the ones who came up with the name Kotaku. And what I'm told is that Kotaku comes from otaku, which is a type of person who's into manga and video games. And then they added ko in front of it, which means small or a little bit in Japanese, and invented this word that doesn't really mean anything in Japanese.
So you're a little bit into video games. Although,
yes.
That's interesting.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking too. It's kind of ironic.
Yeah.
So now we're going to get right into the meat, the heart of the questions tonight. And the first question is, there's been a lot of flack going around the industry about game developers and publishers who are paying off these big gaming sites in order to give them good reviews. Now, have you guys at Kotaku ever had a problem with this? Have you run into this?
No, I've never had anybody ask, at least not directly or any way that I noticed. I might be a little slow, so maybe they were trying to bribe me. But I've never had anybody out and out say, give us a good review and we'll give you this.
Right.
I think that I'd like to think that that's not that obvious a problem doesn't exist right now in game journalism, and that it's perhaps a more subtle issue that maybe they try to pressure people into doing more positive reviews, or maybe they'll work through through advertising, and then advertising will go to editorial. That doesn't happen on Kotaku, and I think that it doesn't happen as often as maybe people think it does on other sites. But again, like having someone just bluntly say, we're going to give you, X amount of money for a review is something I've never heard happen before.
Okay. So David Jaffe was on our show last week, and he went on a bit of a diatribe about game journalism and how a lot of times we will twist people's words in order to get headlines and click counts. And he specifically called out Kotaku for doing this sort of infraction or injustice against the gaming world. What do you think about that?
Jaffe? A diatribe?
Yeah.
No, Jaffe and I talk a lot, and I hate to call people friends who I meet very rarely in person, but I'd like to say that we're friends. And we don't really have any issues with each other. He's very outspoken because I think he's very passionate about what he does, and that's fantastic. The game industry needs that. I actually listened to the interview, and I'd like to think that he didn't mean to specifically call out Kotaku, though it certainly sounded that way. I think what he was sort of meaning to do was, not to put words in his mouth, but what he was meaning to do was to talk more about an issue that he sees prevalent in game journalism. I don't think it's as prevalent as he makes it out to be, and I don't think we've ever done that with him. I'd like to say we haven't ever done it with anybody, but I'm sure there has been at least a couple occasions where we've done it by accident. But after he said that, I sort of sat down and thought about it, and I couldn't think of any occasions where I was aware or he told me that we had done anything that, changed what he was saying in some way.
Right. Sometimes you do it unexpectedly, not even meaning to.
Right.
And sometimes it's just the wording that goes into a headline, and that kind of leads me into my next question. Do you feel that sensationalism or snarky sort of headlines and stories, do you feel that they breed a negative atmosphere in the gaming community?
I think they can. I think that you have to be careful about how a story is written. I mean, Gawker Media, and I think a little less so Kotaku, is known for being snarky. Kotaku is snarky, but not nearly as snarky if you read, Gawker.com or Defamer or some of the other sites. And I think that, yeah, it can go overboard sometimes, and it's a line that we always sort of try to stay right on so we don't get too over the top about things. But I think it's also important to remember that as journalists, we're not supposed to be cheerleaders for the industry. We're not, as Jaffe himself has said many times, we're not part of the industry. We're not supposed to be part of the industry. And hopefully we're never going to want to become part of the industry. This is my career, and There are a lot of journalists out there who do this for a living and don't ever want to get into the industry. And I think that that's where people should be. I'm sort of going off on a tangent. But talking about sensationalism, I think that there's also a fine line between sensationalism and writing a riveting headline. I mean, if the headline can be accurate and not mislead and still be in some sense sensational, in the sense that it's captivating. So, sensational means that it's a strongly emotional subject matter. So, again, it's sort of tricky.
Well, then, wouldn't it be fair to say, and I'm not accusing Kotaku of this at all, let me get that out there, but there are certain game sites that anytime news comes out about the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox 360, whether it be good or bad, they'll put up a headline to get clicks and to get people in their forums bashing one console or the other. Wouldn't you consider that as journalism maybe making a mistake and just going for click counts over actual news?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think first off, Kotaku, and I'm sure a lot of sites go through this. I get emails often where I have people accusing us of being Xbox fanboys and PlayStation 3 fanboys and Wii fanboys. And a lot of times I get those emails on the same day, which I always think is funny because in some sense it shows that we're doing our job, because people think that we, either like or hate everything. And obviously that's not the case. It's very hard to write about a subject matter that people are so passionate about and not do so in a way that, in some sense, spurs conversation. Does Kotaku deliberately try to start flame wars? Absolutely not. Traffic is great, but it's not why I run a gaming site. There are people who sell ads for Kotaku who I never talk to, who I'm sure care about traffic. I don't care about traffic. I care about informing people, breaking news, and writing interesting stories. So that's not what motivates me. And I think that there are a lot less people out there in game journalism who are motivated by that than readers think. I think that readers tend to believe that, just with newspapers, that people write what sells. And the same argument's made about newspapers all the time, that newspapers are sensational or they cover crime because people want to buy the newspaper. If it bleeds, it leads. And again, I just don't think it's as prevalent as people think.
Now, we have a lot of your readers in the room tonight actually asking questions, so I'm going to throw it over to VK, who's talking with your fans in the room. She's got some questions for you. So what do you got over there, VK?
All right, the first one is actually has to do with the recession. Solid Spider asks, what does gaming have to do to escape the economic recession?
I think that companies like EA and Ubisoft, and to some extent Take-Two, are doing the right thing. That they just have to be a lot more careful right now with what they're doing. I mean, they can't go as crazy as they've been in the past with new IP. And I hate to say that, because as a gamer, I love to see new games coming out. I think EA last year, did a phenomenal job of introducing all these new ideas, but they lost tons of money. And, I'd rather them be around for a few more years than come out with a few games right now. So I think everybody sort of has to hibernate a little bit when it comes to game development and just play it safe until we get through this period, which hopefully will be in the next year or so.
All right. Thank you. Moxie asks if you are excited or dreading the fact that E3 is going back to its more public style.
I don't know. I guess a little of both. Last E3 was so incredibly boring. I mean, a lot of information was disseminated, and we got a lot of hands-on time, but it still didn't have that thrill and that sizzle that all E3s in the past have had, including the one in Santa Monica. So I'm excited to see that coming back. I'm not excited about the fact that I'm going to be losing my voice and getting sick and all the other things that happen with the bigger shows, because you can't hear anything and you have to run around like crazy and it's just packed. So I'll see. It sounds to me like what they're trying to do this year is maybe marginally better than what they've done before when it came to like the huge shows. So we'll see how it turns out.